So I've talked before on this channel about the dangers of over planning, overthinking, and not taking action. But there is one type of planning that I think is crucial, and that is annual planning, an annual review. So in this video, it's going to be a long one. We're going to walk through my process for doing an annual review. Now, my annual review process is something that's been refined over the past decade. I've done it pretty much every year. If you want to follow along and you want to use this document, you can download it with the link in the description below. So let's dive into this. I'm going to walk you through the process start to finish, step by step. If you don't do an annual planning process, if you just go through each year, you pass through this year into the next without stopping to think, without stopping to reflect, and without stopping to redirect yourself or reorient yourself, you can find yourself kind of being pushed around by the wind, just going in the direction, reacting to everything, not really having clarity or vision, and that's not a good thing. So the whole point of doing an annual review, an annual plan, is to look at what you've done, look at where you're at, look at the things that are good, that you're doing well, look at the things that maybe you aren't doing so well, and then what you should do from there on out based on what you want and what you desire. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to walk through the setup and environment. We're going to walk through a few foundational sort of review and planning principles that are important to internalize as you go through this process. Then we're going to move on to the actual work itself. We're going to start with the review phase, the looking back at what's been. This is important because if we don't review and introspect, we can miss out on important lessons and important indicators of where we should go next. After we've done that, we're going to move on to the planning phase. And then finally, there are some further resources if you want to go even deeper. So starting with the setup and environment, this is no normal annual review. It's time consuming, it demands full mental focus, and it requires a calm headspace. It's not something you can do sort of intermittently, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. You really want to be able to block out long periods of time, like at least 45 minutes per session, ideally closer to 90, and really get in the zone, get in flow, and treat it as work. Like treat it as deep work, because it is. It's the most high leverage work you can do. It's thinking, right? Don't treat it as just like non-work or something that's sort of non-serious. Like it's one of the most serious things you can do. For that reason, a few recommendations. The first, before you even get started, is to just get organized. Do all your email, clean your computer, clean out your task management apps, organize your folder system, your desktop, so on and so forth. Same thing, get physically organized. Clean your home office. Clean the environment where you're going to be doing your review, right? Make it feel nice. Make it feel like you want to be there. You want to set aside some time. Like I said, this is time consuming. On average, I spend about 8 hours over 2 days doing my annual review. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. It just depends, but it does take time, and you don't want to rush it. You kind of want it to take time, because the more time it takes, the deeper you're going, right? Like you might spend 2 hours journaling and you might be thinking, well, that's such a waste of time. But it's like, no, it's not. If you're spending 2 hours journaling, there's probably a reason why you're doing that. Like you need to work through some stuff. And so those 2 hours are like some of the highest leverage 2 hours you can spend on anything. So block out the time. This one is kind of optional, right? Like I'm gonna put optional there. Consider using pen and paper. I don't do this every year, but there's something about pen and paper that forces you to slow down. It forces you to think through what you're writing and really introspect on a deeper level. When you're typing, it's so much easier to just write whatever. But when you've got a pen and you're working with paper, it's slow. And so you're kind of thinking through each word in a way that you wouldn't if you were typing. Consider leaving the house. One thing I like to do when I can is book an Airbnb, a remote cabin, or a hotel, and just go away for 2 days and get this done. Like get out of the house, get out of my normal environment, spark some creativity, spark different thoughts. It's a nice thing to do. But if this is not feasible for you for whatever reason, consider just going to a coffee shop or a library or getting out of your normal environment. If you think you can just do it fine in your home office, then that's fine too. You don't need to do this. You don't need to go out. I just find it to be a useful thing, but don't let it stop you. Don't think, I can't do that, so my annual review's not going to be as good. Like, no, it'll still be fine. It's just a nice thing to do. This one I had to put in here. Don't use ChatGPT for your answers. Don't use it for your journaling. You don't need it for a process like this, but I know that there's some people out there who will think, oh, I can do it more efficiently if I use AI. It's like, you're missing the point. This is an introspective exercise that you want to do with you, like just you and your thoughts and your brain. And if you get GPT involved in that for anything other than like simple formatting, it's not going to be very good. You want to remove distractions. This kind of links back to the setting aside time. You want long, uninterrupted periods of focused time, and you should treat this process as work. It's fun work, but it's still work, right? Finally, this is a writing heavy, it's a writing centric process. You should expect to write a lot of words and for it to take time. If you're not used to writing a lot, then this will be a bit hard because it's writing centric. If you feel challenged, if you're struggling with it, if you feel like it's taking a lot of time, then you need to remind yourself that it is one of the highest leverage things you can do. It is some of the most important work you can do. If spending an extra day or two working on your review or plan better positions you for the next year, then that is well worth it, right? It's one of the best things that you can do. It's one of the best uses of your time. So just keep that in mind if you feel like it's a struggle, you don't want to do it, or you want to speed up the process or take shortcuts. Shortcuts don't help you when you're doing this type of work. Okay, so that is the setup and environment, some housekeeping out of the way. I'm going to quickly go through these principles. You can obviously read these in greater depth if you download the document. The first thing is the act of reviewing and planning is just as beneficial as the review and plan itself. There's something about sitting down for a day, 2, 3 days, and really diving in to, what's happened over the last 12 months. Where are you at? What are your goals? What do you want? What do you not want? Where are you failing in life? Where are you succeeding? Like, how often do you do that? Most people never do that, right? Maybe they do it once a year if they follow a process like this, but that's about it. And so what you'll find is that going through a process like this, if you're not someone who does it often, is that you will gain insights that you wouldn't have got just passively moving through life. You gain insights from doing this introspective work, regardless of which goals you set for next year, right? So the act of doing an annual review is just as beneficial as what comes out of it, or what goals you set, or like the tangibles. Second, self-honesty is the first step in transformation. When you work through this document, when you do your review, when you do any journaling, you're the only person who needs to see it. And for that reason, you should be completely honest. If you've had a bad year, if you haven't done what you said you were going to do, don't lie to yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. Just be honest, right? Like, if you're not honest, then it's very hard to reposition yourself. You want to look at where you are, what you've done, be completely self-honest, and then observe it. And then when you plan out the next 12 months, you can kind of start from that point of pure honesty, of saying, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going to go, this is what I need to change. Third, meta clarity is everything. I'm not a fan of like super intricate granular plans because life is too dynamic, right? It moves too fast. You might make a goal, you might plan out the next 12 months of your life down to the week, but then an opportunity comes up and it just completely changes everything. You can't plan for that. But meta clarity, so like the clarity above the clarity, is everything. Knowing where you're going, knowing who you are, knowing what you authentically want, what you don't want, what your strengths and weaknesses are. That is meta clarity, and it sits above your plan. It sits above your goals in a way that actually informs your goals. One of the biggest benefits of doing this type of annual review and plan is that it helps you gain meta clarity, because you can look back over the past 12 months certain things you did or didn't do. And that kind of informs, kind of gives you an idea about who you actually are and what you actually want. For example, you might review the last 12 months and you might find out that a certain type of work really drains you. And it's like, maybe I'm not suited for that. Maybe I should try and do less of that. Maybe I should set a different type of goal for next year because I thought I wanted to achieve this goal, but actually I hated it. And I just like the idea of that goal, not the actual reality of it. Fourth principle is that reviewing and planning doesn't always need to feel transformative. So some years when I do this process, I'll be sitting there, I'll be journaling, and I have like a eureka moment. I'm like, oh man, this is what I needed to figure out. Like, this changes everything. Next year is going to be great. Other years I've done it and it's felt like going through the motions. Like, I haven't had that moment, haven't had that spark. I'm just like, yeah, this was the last 12 months. This is going to be the next 12 months. There's not much emotion involved. And that's fine. It doesn't need to result in some sort of feeling or emotion. The important thing is that you do it anyway to gain that clarity and to reorient yourself. Finally, and this is one of the most important ones, your annual plan is just a starting point. A lot of people get stuck when they do this type of exercise because they're worried that they'll create a plan that's not optimal. But a plan isn't something that's set in concrete, that's set in stone, right? It's something that you can change. It's like a hypothesis. It's saying, here's where I think I should go based on the knowledge I have now, and this is what I'm going to do until I have better information. But if better information comes along, then of course you can change your plan, and you probably should. For example, at the end of 2021, my goal for 2022 was to transition out of my business and replace myself. Then I had the opportunity to sell my business, so my plan changed. And then that deal fell through, so I updated my plan again in quarter 4 of 2022. You can't plan for this kind of stuff because, again, life is dynamic. Things happen that you cannot predict. Let's move on to the review phase. The first step in the review phase is to free flow journal. This is a simple step, but it's arguably the most important one. What you're going to do is essentially mind dump the last year. There's no prompts to this, there's no questions, there's no right and wrong way to do it. There are only 2 rules. The first is that you do not self-censor or self-edit. You be completely honest with yourself. If you're frustrated with where you're at or how your year has gone, then write that out in all its truth. Get it on the page. No one needs to read this other than you. The second rule is that you keep writing. You just want to keep going, right? This is like a momentum-centric activity. It benefits from speed and flow. One implication of this is that you follow tangents wherever they go. So you might be writing about the year that's just been, and then you end up writing about something completely different, and that's fine. Just let it happen. Let the words flow out on the page. And if you get stuck, then you can kind of gently bring yourself back to the year, like reviewing your year. This is journaling in its purest form. It's literally trying to close the gap as much as you can between what you're thinking and what you're putting on paper. But it's an exercise that people don't often do. And so as you're doing it, you'll likely come across insights, you'll likely gain some clarity, you'll likely learn some stuff about yourself. It's a very useful thing to do, and it kind of informs, in a way, the rest of the review process, or at least acts as like a starting point to kind of spark your thinking about how the year has gone. All right, a few more tips for this step. Write like you talk. Don't try and sound smart. No one else needs to read this other than you, and so it doesn't matter what the quality is like. Just write like you're thinking, or write like you're speaking to someone. Second, be raw. If you feel like swearing in your writing, do it. If you feel like shouting, do it. If you feel like just writing the same word like 50 times to drill into your head, then do so. There's no rules. There's no specific structure to follow. You can do what you want. It's journaling, right? Third, embrace redirection. The last time I did this sort of free flow journaling, it was about a month ago. I started at the point of being frustrated with something that was going on. And then, as a result of that, I kind of moved over and started like writing this 500 word essay on a topic that was kind of related, that I thought this might be good for YouTube or something. And then I pulled back to the frustration and I was like, I need to make a change. I need to do something radical. And so that resulted in like a 30-day sprint doing some work that got me unstuck. Come back to it. You don't need to do this step in one session. If you can, then do so. But the more time you put into this first step, this free flow journaling, the better. So if you can only do 30 minutes in one session and then 30 minutes in another, great. Like, don't just stop after 30 minutes. If you want to keep going, schedule out another session, and just do it until you feel like you've kind of tapped out everything. I would say that this step is more important than the steps that follow, right? So if you can only do like one part of the review phase and one part of the planning phase, it would be this free flow journal. We do the same thing in the planning phase. We do a free flow journal plan. Anyway, I'm assuming that you want to go deeper. So we're going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is doing specific goals review. If you didn't set any goals for the last year, then you can skip this step, right? Can't really do this step if you haven't set goals. If you have, then you want to go through this process. You want to answer the following questions for each goal you set in 2023. First, did you achieve the goal? Like just a binary answer, yes or no. If you didn't achieve it, how close did you get? Maybe you were trying to grow your business by 50% and you only got to 40%. It's like that should be acknowledged because that's actually quite close to achievement, even though it's not technically achievement. And then why didn't you achieve the goal? What got in the way? What stopped you from finishing or even starting? Now, to give you an example of what this might look like, the goal, lose 15 pounds. Did I achieve this goal? No. I lost 10 pounds, but not 15. Why didn't I achieve it? Well, I stalled in the second half of the year and I ended up maintaining weight instead of dropping the last 5 pounds. I lost track of my habits, made excuses, so on and so forth. Just a quick, paragraph of explanation as to why I didn't achieve the goal. If you did achieve the goal, great. If you feel like writing something, you can, but you don't need to. You can just say, yes, I achieved the goal. And once you've done that for each goal that you set in the last year, you want to write just a brief sort of analysis of your goal, achievement, non-achievement for the last year. So, for example, just a simple paragraph here, right? Overall, I'm happy with the goals I set for 2023. While I didn't achieve all of them, I had 80%. The ones I did achieve were significant. The ones I didn't achieve were a little too ambitious, so on and so forth. So again, just like a simple, quick journaling exercise. Keep it short, keep it simple, quick analysis, and then we will move on to step 3. This is where we start getting very specific, right? So this is the buckets/areas review. These are the buckets that I use, but you can add your own. We basically have 5. We've got work, career, business, health and fitness, family, fun, challenge, and then spiritual faith. Again, you might have some others. You might have a certain hobby that you're already into, and so you might put that down. You might have a side hustle, and so you might want a separate area for your side hustle. Do whatever you like here. These are just the ones that I use, and I find a lot of people use these as well. So what you're going to do is basically go through each area and answer the following questions. For work, we have 2 specific ones that you won't find in health and fitness and family and so on and so forth. What was the 20% of your work that produced 80% of the results? Which projects did you finish? List everything out. What went well? What didn't go so well? What lessons did you learn? What would you score this out of 10 and why? And you can see those last 4 questions kind of repeat for the other areas. Here's an example. For work, what was the 20% of work that produced 80% of results? 2 quick bullet points. Did this and this. What progress did I finish? Launched a new product. Put out 34 content pieces. You could list these out as well. It's nice seeing like 34 lines on a page of work that you did that year. What went well? Again, bullet points. What didn't go so well? What lessons did I learn? And what would I score this area out of 10 and why? You can see there's just a quick sort of explanation here. So pretty straightforward, but this does take some time. right? Because you kind of got to analyze and go deep on each of these. What you'll notice, by the way, I think I may have mentioned this before, is you will probably double up on some of the things you write in the free flow journal. Like if you're thinking about your year in step 1, you're probably going to talk about work or business and what went well and what didn't go well. But you're going to be doing it in like a free flow format, right? And so in step 3, you're getting specific, you're answering specific prompts in like a systematic way, which can be very useful. But don't worry about the fact that you might have already talked about it in your free flow journal. There's nothing wrong with doubling up. If anything, it's useful. It's useful to kind of drill it into your head. Step 4 is sort of like a character trait review, right? And there will be some crossover between the bucket review step and this one, but this is worth doing anyway. It doesn't take that long. So whatever traits you want to work on, put them in here. These are the ones I have: work ethic, confidence, action orientation, generosity and giving, good friend, partner, sibling, self-discipline. And so you just want to rate these out of 10 and then give a reason for doing so, right? So here's an example for work ethic. 7 out of 10, I was on and off, 5 periods of intense focus, followed by laziness, so on and so forth. And then step 5, there are some general review questions. So couple ones here. Which activities drained you and why? Which activities energized you and made you feel most alive? And why do you think this is? Which people drained you? Which people energized you? Which lessons did you learn? You'll probably find that you've already answered this one in the buckets because you're like answering for each area, but maybe you have some other lessons. If some third-party observer was to write an overview of your last year, what would they write? Specifically, what would they write about how you acted and the decisions you made or didn't make? This is another sort of journaling prompt. It doesn't have to be as intense or in-depth as the free flow journaling step, but it's useful to kind of think outside of yourself. Like, what would a third party say? And then what are the biggest personal bottlenecks that you're currently facing? Here's an example. My lack of good sleep routine and hygiene means constantly low energy levels. Or my lack of focus ability is holding me back. I need to focus on building my daily deep work habit. There's probably a couple of bottlenecks or one obvious one that exists that you could unblock and it would help you a lot. So that is the review phase. Just to recap, we start by going through this free flow journal review. We move on to doing a specific goals review. Then we move on to the buckets, areas review, character trait review, and then these general review questions. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll have taken some time. We move on to the planning phase. And we start with the first step as mentioned, which is to do the free flow journaling. Pretty straightforward here, but you're doing it in like a future focused way, right? So instead of reviewing what's been, you're thinking about what's to be. When you're doing this, you should aim to be optimistic, you should be in a positive mindset. If your review was a little bit pessimistic, if you weren't happy for the year, you want to try and switch out of that mindset as you do this type of journaling. Spend some time on this. You want to drill down on what you really want, what you desire to achieve out of the upcoming year. And then you'll move on to step 2, which is specific goal setting. Now, I've written a few principles for goal setting here. I could go a lot deeper, but a couple of things. The first is that the less but clearer, the better, right? So like, it's better to set one goal that's clear and simple and means something to you and setting like 3 or 4 that are kind of whatever. The most effective people I know are those who have less goals, but they're more challenging, they're more ambitious, they're simple, they're clearly defined, and yeah, less but clearer and better. Your goals should be challenging enough to create activation energy and motivate you, but not too challenging as to be discouraging or to be completely unachievable. So if you set a goal that is too easy, you're probably going to procrastinate on it, which sounds stupid, but like you may find that you procrastinate on the easy tasks more so than the challenging tasks. Because at least challenging tasks, like they demand something of you. right? Like you can't afford to procrastinate. If your goal for next year is to double your business revenue, that's likely challenging. Like you need to put in the work. But if your goal for next year is just to like maintain it, whatever, like you can kind of get by not doing much work and achieve that. But you should be aware of the planning fallacy, which is that we often have a tendency to be too optimistic in our planning, in our goal setting. And so don't set something that is too challenging, otherwise you'll get discouraged. You'll get halfway through the year, or you'll get a few weeks in, and you'll think to yourself, there's no way I'm achieving this. Third principle, commitment to goals has its own meta benefits, regardless of what the goal is. In other words, you gain something by simply applying yourself in pursuit of a goal, regardless of whether that goal is the most optimal goal you could have set. What this means is that you shouldn't overthink your goals and you shouldn't try to set perfect goals because you can't anyway. It does mean that you should view your goals as commitments. They are not nice to do's, they are must do's. What I mean by this is that the person who sets a goal and commits to it and achieves it, even if it's not the most optimal goal, develops a certain character trait or set of traits, which is that they have integrity, they do what they say they're going to do, they build momentum, and so the goals work on them as much as they work on the goals. A couple of questions to ponder and maybe journal about as you go into this step. What could you work on that your future self would respect you the most for? What is the obvious but scary goal you should set? Are you setting goals based on what you think you desire or what you authentically desire? Quite often we set goals based on something we've seen on social media or something that someone's told us, and we find out that actually it's not what we want at all. The closer you can get to authentic desire during this planning phase, the more time you're going to save next year not pursuing goals that don't make sense. And then which goal would produce the most personal growth if achieved? Okay, so now we get on to the work. You want to write as many goals as possible for each bucket, each area of your life. These should be the same as the ones that you've set in the review phase. And this is kind of the brainstorm exercise. You're not judging your goals, you're not analyzing them. We're going to get to that later. You just want to write out all the possible goals you can think of that you might want to do for each. And so you might be done with like 20 goals for work or business or something like that. Maybe less, maybe more. Just write them all out, get them all on paper. And then what you're going to do is narrow each area down to 1 to 3 goals, max. This is the hard part. Going from like 10 potential goals to 1 or 3, it's hard, right? Because you're having to sacrifice all the other potential goals. As you should, because you cannot do like 20 goals in one area. It just doesn't make sense. It's better to have 1 challenging goal than 3 mediocre ones that you wouldn't care about if you achieve. And so I encourage you to think, like really think if you can, about what is the 1 goal that I could set next year? Like what is the 1 thing I want to do in business? And if that's really hard and you can't think of like just 1, or you can't decide between 2, then sure, set 2 goals. But like as much as you can, try and get down to that 1 goal, right? Okay, so once you've done this, you might want to sit on it for a bit. You might want to like sleep on it, come back the next day, have a look at them. Then you might do that and be like, yeah, well, this goal doesn't make sense, or that sounded good yesterday, but not today. Don't rush through it. But once you've done that, you want to move on to step 3, which is first quarter focus. Planning out your entire year in detail is difficult, like I mentioned at the start of this video, because life is dynamic, plans change, and so you want to kind of bring this 12-month plan down to like a quarter focus, like an actionable like set of projects and systems that you're going to act on to achieve these goals. And the first part of doing this is to convert goals into projects. Goals are directional. They give you the trajectory, but projects are actionable and they feed into those goals. So you want to take the goals that you set for each of these buckets, you want to pick one of them, and you want to create a project that either results and the achievement of the goal will get you closer to it, because some goals require more than one project. For example, your goal might be to double business revenue, and that might involve like 2 or 3 projects over the year, right? Also worth noting that some projects will last longer than a quarter. When I was training for a marathon this year, I set a training project which was 4 months long. I wasn't going to break that up into like first quarter training, second quarter training, which was like a month project. No. Use common sense. Some projects take 2 weeks, some take 4 months, some take even longer. It's up to you to define that, but just remember Parkinson's law. You should probably shorten the timeline, not make it too long, because work will expand as to fill the time allotted to it. Most people set their deadlines too long. So let's say your goal is to double business revenue next year. Well, you might decide that the best way to achieve that is by launching 4 new products, 1 per quarter. So your first quarter focus, first 3 months of next year, would be to launch that first product. Or you might decide that you're going to launch all 4 in the second half of the year, whatever. But let's just assume that you're going to launch that first product, develop it in the first quarter. What you'll do is you'll define the project. So the goal, double business revenue, potential projects. You might have a few, but this one stands out. Launch 4 new products. And so quarter 1 focus is to develop and launch that first product. And then what you want to do, you don't need to create a full complex project plan, unless you really want to, but it's usually just a form of procrastination. You do want to define the next action. You want to start next year on January 1st with a bunch of next actions, right? Like, this is what I need to do. Next action in this case might be to survey the list, or your list, email list, to identify in-demand product idea. In-demand product idea. Right? So we've gone from like the goal, which is double business revenue, to a simple next action. We're going from aspirational to actionable, which is what I mentioned here under projects to systems. So we're moving from aspirational up here in the clouds, and then we're going more specific. We're getting more actionable. So we've gone from free flow journaling to goal setting to projects, and now to systems. You want to identify the systems that will enable you to complete the projects you'll define. Systems aren't necessarily tasks. They are the foundation that allows you to do the tasks, to do the work, right? So coming back to our example, we want to double business revenue in 2024. We're going to develop and launch the first product in quarter 1. The next action is to survey the list. The system we're going to use to achieve this, to develop and launch the first product, is to do 2 hours of deep work every weekday morning on product development and marketing. I'm kind of calculated that if we do that, 60 hours of work a month times 3 months, 180 hours of work. Yeah, that'll allow us to achieve, or allow me to achieve this project, which will push towards the goal. So you want to identify what those systems are. Another one, let's say you've got a health and fitness goal. You want to lose 10 pounds in quarter 1. Your system might be to fast until noon every day, right? Like, that's a system. Or it might be to do cardio 3 times a week. That's a system. Identify what it is and then write it down. Then we have general life systems. So you're gonna, like, not every project and not every goal needs a system. A lot of them usually do. But then we have general life systems. So just like general habits that aren't necessarily like related to a specific area, but are helpful. For example, it might be to wake up at 6 a.m. every day. It's not area specific, but it kind of does impact all others, because if you wake up early, you're more likely to be productive, exercise, all that kind of stuff. So have a think about what those general life systems are. Don't always need them, especially if you've got a bunch of other systems like across all these buckets. If you've got a system for health and fitness, work, family, you're probably fine. You don't need any general life systems, but if anything pops to mind, like, put them in. And then tracking. I'm kind of in 2 minds about habit tracking because A lot of people I know who are very effective don't track their habits at all. But I think there's value in it. I think Peter Drucker's quote about what gets measured gets managed is largely true. I'm kind of a minimalist when it comes to tracking. I don't like religiously track stuff. I don't have like a habit tracker in Notion with a bunch of different colors and stuff like that. Not that I'm saying it's a bad thing, I just don't do it. What I do is I track my time. Again, not religiously. Like there's some days I just don't even care. I'm just working. But for the most part, I track my time and my deep work hours. There'll be a link in here. It'll be an affiliate link. Or you can just Google it. I don't care. Daily word count for writing, I use Heptabase, which is kind of like my main system for managing everything. Probably going to do a video on that at some point. Fitness, Strava for like running, hiking. I use the Strong app for tracking workouts, and then MyFitnessPal for nutrition. Sleep, I have an Aura Ring, the associated app. And then for everything else, like random habits, I'll just use Apple Notes. I'll just write like real simple notes. So for example, like at the moment, I'm tracking my dead hang time, like just hanging off a bar. And I just have like a simple note where it's like bullet point, date, and then time. And I'm just like every day that I do the dead hang, I put in the new time. Like to keep it simple. You don't need a fancy Notion template or a spreadsheet. You can just literally just use a note. So that's pretty much it. We have, just to recap the planning phase, it's been a bit of a process. We start with the free flow journal plan. We move on to goal setting. We do this by area and by bucket, and then we kind of narrow it down. We make it more actionable by figuring out a first quarter focus. Goals to projects, projects to systems, identify the next action, so on and so forth. Quickly, some further resources. These ones you might have looked at, just a couple of videos, articles. Got my quarterly review and planning process step by step, which is very similar to this. It might be helpful for you to do in like March, end of March. And then the one thing I do want to mention as work sprint, the reason I want to mention it is because what happens when you create a plan like this is you feel quite motivated and you go into the new year and you've got this energy, you've got this excitement, you've got this clarity. For the first week or so, things are good. But when you start executing and when you start taking action, you're kind of faced with resistance. There's struggle. There's challenges you don't foresee. The work might not be that enjoyable. You experience boredom. You don't plan for that. This is the nature of doing hard things, of doing work, of pursuing hard goals. One thing that helps you to overcome these things, especially if you're like a, solopreneur, knowledge worker, freelancer, one thing that helps a lot is being part of a community of other people that are all doing similar things, running their own businesses, pursuing hard goals. Just there's like a general energy that comes with that. And the second is accountability. Now, Work Sprint is a 4-week accountability cohort for these types of people, for creators, knowledge workers, solopreneurs. It doesn't really matter what you do, but as long as you're someone who wants to push things forward, you've got projects you want to work on, you want to work with intensity and consistency, then it's for you. So in Work Sprint, focus on one project over 4 weeks. You work harder than you likely have in a long time. You check in. You do an accountability check-in every day. There's live co-working sessions. There's live training sessions. It's just a great time. So I would encourage you to check that out. We're going to be running a cohort in the new year. So make sure you head to the website, worksprint.co. Make sure to join the waiting list so you get notified as soon as we open the enrollment. And I'd love to see you in there. And again, if you want this document, if you want it in Notion or Google Docs, click the link down below. It's yours, it's free. And yeah, if you've got any questions, we got feedback or comments, comment below. Or just send me an email. You'll get my email once you download this, because I'll send it to you via email. Thanks for watching. See you later.